Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the first Kevlar Awakening series for 2025 in conjunction, in collaboration with Kumbukeni. My name, as always, is Olade Dosmu. I'm the co-founder of Emerging Kevlar. And what we do on this platform is to decolonize our minds and awaken our consciousness, guys. So stay tuned, guys. Undukum.
Habari gani, karibuni, asanteni, mwaka mpya mwema. It is good to be here. Again, the name is Nduko. I am the host on Kumbukeni, always joining my brother to do the work that must be done to serve our community, to tell our narrative from our perspective, and to counter the false narrative the Wazungu have propagated against us for too long, so that we can return to who we are. So it's good to be here. Good to have our guest today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, our special guest today, I'm gonna let him introduce himself. The topic today is the capture of African health through vaccinations. So, guys, Dr. Wahome would introduce himself, and then once he's introduced himself, he's going to go straight into the topic. And as always, if there's anything that hits a nerve, something that we can relate to, please share your questions. And then once we finish the presentation, then we're going to ask our guest the questions. Dr. Wahome, you're more than welcome to the series, sir.
Very well. Let me just go to the business that brought us here.
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself as I introduce the slides, so that we can get some serious work done.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So
okay, bringing it up now.
You can see the screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Good. So that's the topic, the capture of Africa through vaccination. And I just have 10 slides I wanted to share, and really is to tease our people to think outside the box, to be open-minded and to see the dangers as we see them. My name is Wahome Ngare. I am a child of God. So those titles there are very important to me. I am a child of God. I am the son of Ngare and Gathoni. Those are my parents. I'm a Christian of Gikuyu extraction, and we'll discuss that if people have a problem with it. I am the husband of Mercy. I am the father to Ngare, Nyingi, and Gathoni. I'm the father-in-law to Caitlin, and I'm the grandfather to Mothoni and Washera. And really, family is what makes me do what I do, because it's important that we think about posterity. I am the co-founder of an organization we call the African Sovereignty Coalition, Kenyan chapter. And we have very similar things that we worry about with the Emerging Kevlar. So it is really indeed a pleasure and an honor to be here. Now, just a few things about the forgotten moral and ethical concerns about vaccination. And I'm hoping there are doctors who are listening and they will be able to engage on this matter. Before vaccination was started, there were certain moral and ethical concerns that needed to be addressed, because vaccination is about deliberately infecting a healthy person with a mild disease in the hope of protecting them against an actual and harmful disease. And it's very important that as we discuss vaccinations, that this does not leave the attention of our people, that we are deliberately infecting a healthy person with a mild disease in the hope of protecting them against the actual harmful disease. Now, for any disease for which a vaccine can be produced, the body can develop natural immunity after healing from the infection. Again, very important, because science has almost made it sound like the only way our body can produce immunity is if we are vaccinated. The truth is that if the body cannot respond to the disease organism, you cannot produce a vaccine. So both the vaccine and natural infection would give immunity. A natural infection always gives a much stronger immunity than the vaccination. So it's important that, again, that is kept in mind, so that if there is a disease for which we can manage and treat a patient, and the body can be able to produce an immunity against that disease, that patient then is protected if they recover from the disease. So the question then is it moral and ethical for a doctor or a healthcare provider who should do no harm to deliberately cause infection in a healthy person. That was the first and most important moral and ethical concern that had to be answered. And because vaccines are given to healthy people, any risk of complication that they may cause can be avoided by avoiding the vaccine. Again, very important. If you're a healthy individual and the vaccine has risks and complications, you can actually avoid those risks by avoiding the vaccine. And therefore, it then becomes clear that both the healthcare professional and the recipient, the benefit of vaccination must always outweigh the risk of vaccination, not of the disease. The benefit of vaccination must outweigh the risk of vaccination. So if a vaccine would cause more death and harm than the disease, then it is not worth taking. So this is a very important slide, and I thought that's the best place to start addressing this issue. Now, the next one is, what is the risk of a pandemic eradicating humanity? Is it really possible for a disease to come that would actually wipe out the whole of humanity? Is that really a possibility? Now, by last year, December, there were reported 7 million cases, confirmed deaths of COVID-19 from 2020, 2024, 4 years. The estimated world population is 8.2 billion. It therefore means that COVID killed or has killed up to now 0.08% of the world population, or if you want, 0.09 of the world population. It was a pandemic. It had spread across the globe, and it has killed 0.9% of the world population. Now, death is not a good thing, and if we can prevent it, we should try. It is inevitable. Most of us, in fact, all of us will end up that way. But the thing is, should there have been so much hype and fear about what was termed as a pandemic? And is it possible that it could have wiped out humanity? These statistics help us to go through this. The Spanish flu 2018, this is 1918, this is 1918 to 1919. I'll change those for the slides of those who want to look at them later. The estimated deaths were 17.4 million. And again, these are estimated deaths. And the estimated world population at that time was, again, this is 1918, was estimated at 1.8 billion. And therefore, the Spanish flu, which is counted to have been the greatest killer pandemic, killed about 1% of the world population. So again, as we face other pandemics, it's very important that we keep these statistics in mind so that we are in the frame where we are clear about what risk we are talking about. The Spanish flu, the most severe pandemic that is recorded, killed 1% of the world population. Is it possible for a pandemic to eradicate humanity? I'll leave you to think about that. Now let's go to the question of, if there was a madman who wanted to reduce world population, what would be the diabolical genius? So this madman has the intention of reducing world population and has the capacity of creating a virus to achieve his goal through the gain of function research, which is research that is available, where you take a virus that was not causing disease and you enhance it and introduce into it through genetic engineering the capacity for it to infect human beings. And the idea has always been that you're doing that just in case some crazy person does the same thing. And therefore you produce a vaccine against this potential virus in case it is used as a bioweapon. Very warped thinking, but there you go. Now, this evil genius also has the ability to create a slow killing or sterilizing injection that can be given to the whole population. Now, if you are that madman and your intention is to reduce the world population, between the virus and the injection, which would be your ultimate weapon for population reduction? Which would it be? Think about it. Now, if I was the madman, the injection would be the best weapon, because then you can give it directly to the target population. The infection, you have to spread the virus. You're not sure who will get sick. Maybe not everybody will get sick because the natural immune system is still functional. But if you can get the injection into the body of every person in the target population, then you would probably be able to achieve your goal. But then how would you get the population to willingly and cheerfully come for the injection? So you use the virus, you create a crisis. The crisis is through forced testing of even those people who are not sick, who are healthy, who have no symptoms. You use a test kit that you have produced yourself. Then you read the infections and death rates daily. In every country across the world, you tell them how many people have been infected, how many have died from this bad disease. You quarantine people, you lock down people, so everybody is in total panic. There is anxiety, there is depression, and everybody is looking for a savior. Then you present your injection as the ultimate solution, and you do this through mandates and coercion, and say, we'll only go back to normal when we are all vaccinated. So everybody has to get a vaccine, otherwise lockdowns don't come, are not lifted. We are not going to lift the quarantines and all that stuff. Now, it is important for the world population to understand that if you mandate vaccinations, you actually bury the evidence of whether that vaccine is useful or not. You actually bury it, okay? You bury the evidence, because the only way you would tell if a vaccine is useful is if you have people who did not receive it and people who received it. And then you can compare those who received the vaccine and those who did not receive the vaccine, and then you're able to tell who really benefited. If you mandate and everybody gets that jab, you bury the evidence of the side effects, and the only person who benefits is the diabolical genius. Now, vaccines are a national security risk, because when a disease outbreak breaks out, only a small portion of the population actually gets sick. And even then, only a population of those who get the disease actually suffer severe disease and death. So not everybody, not the ones who never got infected, have no risk at all. Now, when we offer medical treatment that has side effects, because most of the drugs we use would have side effects, only the population that is sick would be at risk of injury from that disease, because you don't treat the people who are well. But when we use vaccines, and vaccines are offered to the whole population, if that medication that is used has side effects, it would actually affect the whole population. And that is why every government in the world must take vaccines as a national security risk. Who is producing your vaccines? How can you determine if they have what they say it has? How do you determine if what they say how it works is how it works? What are the other components within these vaccines? Is it safe? Have you seen animal studies? Have you seen the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials? Every government must be able to ascertain for its population that the vaccine is not a danger to the population. And this is how vaccines must be considered national security risks. Now, have vaccines ever been abused in the past? There was a clandestine fertility regulating tetanus vaccine that was used allegedly to eradicate neonatal tetanus. And these campaigns started off in South America, went to India, eventually came to Africa. And in our country, Kenya, They came to the country in 2014, 2015. So if you have seen the little video where I'm addressing President Museveni, this is what I was talking about. Now, fertility regulating vaccines were developed by WHO. So this image is not very clear, but this is the outcome document that was published in 1993. And that portion of the report says is a report of a meeting between women health advocates and scientists to review the current status of the development of fertility regulating vaccines. And this was in Geneva, Switzerland, 1992. WHO spent money between 1972 to 1992 to develop a fertility regulating vaccine. 20 years of research and money spent. Who are the other players? The UNDP, UNFPA, the World Bank, special programs research, and then the development training and research training in human reproduction. These were the other organizations other than WHO, including the World Bank. Very interesting. But they actually spent money over 20 years to develop a fertility regulating vaccine. And in 2014, 2015, when this vaccine was brought to our country, we were very suspicious because we had heard about what had happened in South America. And the Catholic groups there had also been able to test the vaccine and found that it was the tetanus regulating vaccine, the fertility regulating vaccine. So we took a few vials from the field during the time it was being given. We tested them using very simple testing techniques, and we found that it had beta-HCG. Beta-HCG is a hormone that supports pregnancy. There is nowhere beta-HCG is used in the production of tetanus. And therefore, the conclusion would have been that our mothers were told they were going to be given a vaccine from the age of 14 to the age of 49 that was going to help prevent their children from getting tetanus at the point of birth. That time when this was being done, we were already giving our mothers, every pregnant woman in this country was getting 2 shots of tetanus vaccine that would protect her and her child at the point of birth up to 6 weeks. But then this campaign was brought by WHO, and the vaccine was to be given now to girls from the age of 14 and women up to the age of 49, whether pregnant or not. And that caused suspicion. And when we tested, of course, the rest is history. So WHO has actually used immunization campaigns, national immunization campaigns, to give people vaccines that are not what was intended. So instead of the women getting the normal tetanus vaccine, they got the tetanus vaccine that is a fertility regulating vaccine that was produced through the funding of WHO. Now, we were called names. We were told we are spreading misinformation. And by the grace of God, we got a team from the US and we worked together and we developed this paper, which is still available today. The paper was challenged and we had to do an addendum to that paper because they were threatening to pull it down. It's not surprising. They do that kind of stuff. But the paper is still there today. And if you read it, you basically would understand that this is the issue about population reduction and using means that are not ethical to try and achieve that purpose. In any case, who decides the world is populated, overpopulated, and what is their concern? So in conclusion, then what would be the way forward from my point of view is that Africa needs to spearhead a call for a moratorium on gain of function research. In an outbreak, the disease is the enemy. It is not the unvaccinated people. It is also important for us to know that if a vaccine is effective, the vaccinated person is protected and has no reason to fear or be protected from the unvaccinated person. So when we say that we are not safe until we are all vaccinated, that is not science, it is witchcraft. because if the vaccine is effective, the person who accepts it is protected. They have no business fearing the unvaccinated. The unvaccinated should not be discriminated against. And medical ethics should apply even during pandemics. Every person has a right to make an informed choice, and which may be a consent or a decline, and both must be respected. There is no place for vaccines to be used for medical tyranny and to get the world to do what it shouldn't do. And therefore, finally, there is no place for mandates or coercion of vaccination in medical practice. With that, then I would like to stop there and allow discussions to go on.
I don't even know where to start. I am so let me start by saying I have been very angry. Brother Oladele, your crackling sound is very disrupting. That cricket you have unless Bill Gates has put a fake cricket in your system. Anyway, jokes aside, aka madman, all jokes aside, the frustrating thing about the COVID vaccine, oh brother Oladile, I'm gonna meet you real quick. All right. Ish. The frustrating thing about the COVID vaccine is that they forced us to take it. I was traveling to London, I had to take it. I was working with the federal government, I had to take it or lose my job. Literally, that's what they said. Take it or lose your job. And I'm glad you addressed that in your slide. So my question is, how do we protect ourselves from these unethical people? Because they are unethical people. They're going for profit and they don't care what harm, whatever profitable thing they take on has on us, right? How do we protect ourselves from these unethical people who are controlling our health choices when they take away our right to choose whether we can or cannot take a vaccination, whether we can or cannot make it, whether we can or cannot decline theirs? How do we protect ourselves, Dr. Wahome?
Is a $1 million question because so long as the economic system is controlled by corporates, large corporates that are in cahoots and can sponsor elected people into parliament, then you find the governments also are playing ball. The two large corporations working together with government can actually take away liberties. And you find that the ultimate solution is for us all to start taking elections extremely, extremely seriously. And that the elections, we would have to be very careful about the moral structures of those who we put in power. So it's very complicated. It's not easy to answer in one question. But until we get ourselves organized as communities to influence governance, to influence who goes into politics, then it is going to be an uphill task. Second thing is that the corporations, the big corporations, are best owned by the multitudes. And for Africa, the cooperative economy would probably be the best for us, where cooperatives of people coming together, putting their money together to go into certain areas of investment would basically be the natural solution for Africa and the rest of the world. That way, you have private corporates that are big. You have the cooperatives owned by the multitudes that are big, and you have companies that can balance the power up there. So that would be, in a nutshell, what I would think.
So just to add to, I agree with you. And it's interesting that you say that because this is the uh exactly, my brother, exactly, Oladile. We are talking Ubuntu. But this is a hot issue in Kenya currently, given the betrayal of people president that we have running that country, who has put his own interests ahead of the well-being of the people that he was elected to lead. So beyond even that, because this is Kumbukeni and the marginal Kebulan. And walk with me, Dr. Wahome. Beyond even that, imperialism plays a big part in what is going on. Because, as you're very much aware, some African nations wanted to create vaccinations for COVID, and they were stopped by the UK and the US, and threatened with sanctions. Not just stopped, threatened with sanctions. But the most ridiculous thing is they were not just stopped. They had to pick up the phone and say, yeah, excuse me, Massa, can I please make vaccination? Like they had to ask for permission. So how do we get our people? And you know where I'm going, because as you said, you have looked me up. How do we get our people to understand that it would take abandoning that system and literally saying no more and not picking up the phone to ask Massa for permission to protect our lives?
Well, it's very interesting. And again, it is much broader uh, because there's a little slide I didn't show that I love showing about the egg and the chicken. There is the egg and the chicken story, which comes first. And if you understand that both the male and the female must have been there at the beginning, whichever religion you come from, for the first human child to be born, there must have been a male and a female who actually had a sexual relationship for the first child to become. And even if you're Christian and you believe in the Noah's floods and the people who survived after that, humanity would end up being the same stock. We only have one species of human beings. We do not have races. The race story is a false science. There is nothing like that. There is only one humanity. And the easiest way to determine that scientifically is to allow people to have sex. And if they reproduce, they're the same species. That's the only science you need. You don't need anything more than that. Now, if you allowed the world to reproduce and you allowed people to love without color barriers, the world would be brown. You would have a few people who are very light skinned and a few people who are very dark skinned, but generally you'd have a brown world. And that is how it was from the beginning. And the difference between human beings is color. So you have cows that are Frisian and they're black and white, and you have cows that are Jersey that are brown. They are all cows. You can play around with them and get different skin colors, but basically they are all cows. That's the same thing with humanity. It is the same human being, same soul, same spirit, same creator. And if we could understand that, Africa can teach the rest of the world some very important thing that we talk about, which is called Ubuntu. Ubuntu in my mother tongue is Omodo. Modo is a human being. Omodo is humanity. That I am because we are. There is only one humanity. Now, for you to get the so-called Caucasian, for you to get that skin color, you must have a systematic discrimination of dark-skinned people for centuries to a point where you actually remove them from existence amongst you. It is a fake, it is produced, it is through discrimination, it is not a natural occurrence. Now, when you create that kind of thing and then make it the division that the black people want to take away from the white people, or the white people want to do this, then we lose the plot. That is one lesson that Africa can teach the rest of humanity. There is enough for all of us. All we don't want is people who are greedy, who want more than they should have. And Africans have been very generous. I mean, they do not hold back what they have. But discrimination is a teaching from a very small group of people who consider themselves of noble birth and therefore exclude everybody else. You find that the same problems we are having in Africa are being faced by Europeans and people in America of that light-skinned color. I don't call them white people. I don't call myself black. I say I am dark-skinned, and I have no apologies. And if somebody is lighter than me, I will acknowledge that you're light-skinned. Like Nduko, you are light-skinned. But so what? We are all human beings.
Thank you. I'm just gonna. Well, I followed you for a while. I've been following for a while, and I've watched your videos and stuff that you've been doing. Based on what you just said to me now, what you just said to us now, I'm I'm a bit bemused and kind of confused as to why, with all the science, so-called science, and everything that we have in the world today, and the knowledge that we have today, why are we still having pandemics? Because to me, it doesn't make no sense.
Well, another very interesting question is that you see the concept of the virus is a very interesting one. It is one of those things that are very hard to to even as a doctor to get to understand a virus. So we are told it is not a living thing. It is a capsule with some DNA material in it, and it cannot produce, and it cannot live outside of a body. So it doesn't live independently like bacteria would live outside the human body. It has to be in some fluid, and it would only reproduce if it infects other cells in the host organism, multiplies itself, and then produces more viral particles. So it is one of those things that is very, very hard to comprehend, even as a scientist. Now, when you look at the COVID virus and the COVID-19 virus, and now it has become clear that it was developed in a laboratory through gain of function research. That is no longer in doubt. But I would invite you to look at the vaccine that was produced and offered as a solution. So we have an artificial capsule that has an artificial RNA, which is DNA material. And this is what we are going to inject into people so that it can infect their healthy cells and produce the spike protein that was causing all the deaths in COVID-19, in the hope that the body would then respond to that spike protein and produce antibodies against it that would protect the person. Now, if you are following and following closely, then you will understand that I have just described an artificial virus. The COVID-19 injections were artificial viruses. They were genetically modified viruses by the definition of what a virus is. So you're saying you have the capacity to develop a virus as a biological weapon, and you have now the capacity to develop a virus that you can inject into those who are willing to create the same stuff that was causing death from the virus. So if you understand that, you would understand it is possible if my intention is to reduce world population, because the minute you go away from that, none of this makes sense. If the intention is to reduce world population, the pandemics are not going to come to an end, and the vaccines are not going to come to an end. We will have series and series of these things until the world community of morally upright people stands up and says, no, it is the only way that this can stop.
Wow.
The gain of function research must stop, because if it doesn't stop, more and more viruses will be created. So to answer your question, it is the progress of science in the wrong hands that is causing the pandemics.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right there.
As Dr. Wahome says that, I have to point this out. There are three things, I'm sure there are more, but right now that I am focusing on, that should not be made profitable: education, health, and war. we have completely moved away from our divine nature, our spirituality, our role in existence, which is to live harmoniously with nature in order to sustain life. When we privatized war, when we privatized healthcare, and when we privatized education, right? Because especially war and health, if you have a group of people whose business and existence and survival is determined on the vaccinations that they're making, the medication that they're selling, and you being sick, they will ensure that you're always sick, so that they can have customers. And if you have a group of people who benefit from war, from selling weapons, from making airplanes that are used to drop bombs, and they need to make a profit, you will always have war. And so we have brains, all of us, but I'm not seeing us all uniting. And I have so many people who talk about I am a PhD, this, doctor, this, all that. You all see me coming, don't even mention those names, because you're telling me how, what's the word?
You're trying to be polite.
I am trying to be polite, Dr. Wahome, and you know that's a hard task for me. Whew.
It's brainwashing.
Let me reach and get it. You're stupid, right? You're basically telling me you're stupid. You're not using the mental ability that you
critical
were blessed
thinking,
with, right? Because you're telling me that you have an understanding that life is moving in a way that is taking life away, yours as well, being put at risk, and you're okay with it. That you are going to stand there and tell me you're a doctor, but you're not going to stand up against this thing, the war, the privatization of war, the privatization of healthcare, and the privatization of education. So my point being, and I'm going to say this, and this is me promoting us, but promoting us for the sake of our survival. We have a virtual conference coming on the 15th and the 16th. Dr. Wahome, I invite you. And we might actually add something on healthcare that you will be the speaker. We'll give you information on that.
Which month is this?
February.
Next month.
Show up. If you are Black, show up. I don't care if we have a problem or we don't have the capacity to host. Show up. Show up if you are Black and you want to save us from death, because that's what we are facing. Show up. Don't even ask what organization is hosting. Show up. Thank you.
Well, you bring some very interesting concepts. If you read the Malthusian theory and those where the story about population reduction comes from, you see that they recognize three very important things that can reduce population, and that is disease, famine, and war. And this can be engineered. The GMO debate right now means that seed is going to be owned by someone, and that someone will determine whether you eat or you die. So you basically can induce famine if you want to. Disease we have just discussed. If you allow gain of function research, you can create disease and keep creating disease. And then, of course, war. If you look at all those things, you go back to the same diabolical marriage between large corporates and government, and that's where the divorce should come in at.
Okay, Dr. Wahome, my question, you've mentioned this. Our worry, and the Undercook can concur with this, our worry is Africa and how we stay alive. And you've said it in terms of the fact that there's so many things that they're doing to basically affect us. They've been doing this for years. So in terms of healthcare, the vaccinations, and I saw your clip, the one you was referring to when you were speaking to President Museveni. These vaccines, and as you're a doctor, how can we African doctors get together to basically stop these infiltration? Because the infiltration is so deep that it's become policy driven in most countries. How can we stop all these things? Because basically they will come in, they will sit down with your head of the state, they will shake hands, and before you know it, they're making legislation to back whatever they bring in. So for those who are watching this, how do because we need to do something, and we cannot keep allowing these people to keep coming in, and we laying the red carpet for them every so often when we know their intentions are not good. Can you speak to that?
I think the answer is in going back to medical ethics, and that's why I started with the moral and ethical issues about vaccination. I'll talk about two just to give you an example. Hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a viral infection that is sexually transmitted like HIV.
Mm.
When the hepatitis B vaccine was brought to our country, um, we were vaccinated I was in university, and the issue was that this disease is so bad, and if you are in healthcare and you are working with patients, you may actually get this disease if you injure yourself. Just the same story as HIV. And we were encouraged and coerced to take the vaccine. And then we were trained to be testing mothers who are pregnant for hepatitis B. And if you found a woman who was pregnant, who was hepatitis B positive, then you'd test the husband. And if he's negative, you'd propose the vaccination for him because he's at risk. That was how hepatitis B vaccine was introduced. Now today, hepatitis B vaccine is being given to newborn children. It is one of the first vaccines that is given to newborn children. And the question then is, if we sat down as doctors, just asking the moral question, what is the risk of a baby who has just been born getting hepatitis B from a to get a sexually transmitted disease? And if all the mothers have been tested for hepatitis B and they're negative, what is the risk that their baby would actually contract hepatitis B at the point of birth? If the mother is hepatitis B positive, the baby is usually given antibodies at the point of birth to protect them from the infection. So you see, if you just consider just basic science, first principle science, there are certain things you can remove just by agreeing that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter who wrote the policy. It doesn't matter how much they are going to get from these vaccines. The issue is, as healthcare workers, we have a duty to protect the rest of humanity from medical tyranny. And that is a very simple example. Another one that has gotten me into a lot of trouble is the HPV vaccine.
HPV, yeah, yeah.
Yes, again, the HPV is a sexually transmitted disease. And if HPV is sexually transmitted, you have no risk until you have your first sexual intercourse. And if you are a woman and you have HPV, there are about 150 different subtypes of the virus. And if you get HPV, 90% of all women will destroy that virus naturally without anybody giving them any medication. And most of them don't even know that they had the virus in the first place. But 10% of women, the persistent HPV disease, not the infection, if it persists for 15 to 20 years without the knowledge of the woman, then there is a risk of her developing cancer of the cervix. So HPV is not the cause of cancer of the cervix, HPV infection. It is persistent HPV infection. Now, if you do a pap smear test every 2 to 3 years, then you are able to pick up the changes that would lead to cancer 8 to 10 years before the cancer has developed, which would allow a very simple treatment of the cervix to prevent cancer in that woman. So again, if we sat as doctors and we said these are the facts, then do we need the HPV vaccine to be given to our children? And the natural answer is it doesn't make sense. Nobody needs it. All we need to do is make sure that the women who are having this persistent disease are detected early. So the The challenge to the healthcare professional is not to eradicate cancer of the cervix. Those are the kind of things people talk about. It is utopic. You cannot eradicate disease like that. What we need to reduce is the deaths that are caused by cancer of the cervix by detecting those changes early and treating them. So it is possible. It is really possible if we just sat down and reasoned without external interference, without standards that are brought from elsewhere. If we just use basic fast science principles, it is possible for us to chart a totally different path.
Sorry, Unduku. Unduku just said there, she said earlier that we need to be our own solutions, doctor.
Yes.
So basically, we cannot keep looking outwards for our solutions. Yeah. It's impossible because based on what you said and everything that we've been saying, and because we hold this podcast every so often and we talk about this all the time, the solutions that are coming from outside are basically detrimental to Africans.
Yes, they think about it this way. If you go to the WHO, if you go to CDC, if you go to any training for business, everything, you are taught about best practices, and you're taught about benchmarking. It then means that the solutions you're going to get are already solutions that are produced by somebody else in a certain environment for their own good, whether it is to benefit them or it is to be detrimental to you. That's not the issue. The issue is that they have been produced by somebody else. What we need to do is to look at the same solution, look at our African state, and look at what resources we have, and then say that based on what we have, this is what we are going to do. Think about poverty, for instance. People say that people steal because of poverty, but that is not true. We would be punished severely for coming home with a pencil that my father didn't buy. The question is, who bought that pencil for you? Oh, I was given by my friend. Does your friend work? No. So they were bought by their own father. And you now have the pen that the father bought for his child. Did you ever tell me that you needed a pen and I didn't give it to you? So it is not true. People do not steal because they are poor. People steal because they are corrupt. They have corrupt morals. So if we have only this amount of food in our house and we are 7 of us, there was a way we would share that food and everybody would have a chance to wait until the next rain and nobody would be fat. So what? If you're not, if nobody is fat and has a big belly, but we survived until the next rain. It is possible for Africa to develop solutions for Africa.
Yes.
And let me give you another example. The malaria issue. Again, I spoke about it. UK eradicated
that, sir. Yeah.
UK eradicated malaria 1921, US 1951. WHO has a program for eradicating malaria in Africa that has been running from 1955. Up to now, they haven't succeeded. Now, the malaria is a treatable disease, and the quinine and the artemisia that are produced to make the drugs are available. You can plant the artemisia, you can plant outside your garden, and it is working and it treats malaria. Now, if Africa was left to manage malaria on its own, with the hubs that are available around us in every community, we can eradicate malaria from this continent within a very, very short period of time. It's just that we don't have the platform and the capacity to reach one another. Otherwise, it is possible. Now, those people who love us so much have come with a vaccine for malaria. And we are supposed to vaccinate our children against malaria. All the other children in the world will not be vaccinated against malaria except Africa. And you have mad people who want to reduce the population. And you're going to give them an opportunity to vaccinate only African children? You're crazy. I mean, it's ridiculous. That kind of thinking is so warped, it is impossible to understand. So again, very simple. You don't need big factories. You don't need what. You just take this herb and you boil it, for goodness sake. So it is possible. It is possible so long as we are confident about who we are, so long as we are confident we can solve our problems, and so long as we are willing to solve our problems within our means, which
Yeah.
means we don't have to borrow anybody's money to solve our problems.
And so
Good
long as
point.
we understand that this person who comes as a friend is actually a foe, and there's evidence in history that shows that they're a foe, and evidence today that shows that they're a foe.
It is very, very interesting that somebody believes the world is overpopulated and they believe they are superior to the dark skinned person, and that the population of those who are not worthy is multiplying at a higher rate than those who are worthy, according to his warped thinking. And then he comes as a philanthropist because he
Exactly.
loves us so much that he's going to save all our children and save the whole of Africa from self destruction. How can you be so blind not to see this madness?
And as you say that, Dr. Wahome, and I have no issue saying this on public spaces. I really don't care if YouTube takes us down, which they do, and they've taken Lynn Guge's. You were talking about vaccinations, they took your videos down. Msingi Africa was talking about vaccinations, they took, and yet they come here and talk to us about constitutions and freedom of speeches and democracy and all that nonsense, right? They talk one talk and walk a different walk. Here's my thing: we as Africans need to understand that we are at war. We are being killed. Dr. Wahome is being very diplomatic in the way he's. I like his energy, right? Because he is saying what I'm saying, but his voice is so sweet that you're listening and you're hearing him. My voice is harsh, so you hold back and you're like, ah, Nduko is yelling at us. But we need both of us to balance this situation,
Yin and yang.
right? Any research building on our continent that is not ours must be burned down. It must be burned down because it is killing us. I'm not playing. I don't. Again, I was joking with Dr. Wahome. I would probably be one of the people who's abducted if I go back home to Kenya because I am not playing games with Ruto. I don't have time for His Excellency nonsense. No, you earn respect. You have not earned respect, Mr. Ruto. In fact, you have, through your action and the disrespect you are receiving right now. You have earned it. So be a big boy, put on the big boy pants. And if you're going to choose to act the way you're acting, understand the consequences. Your people will not respect you. And no matter how many you kill, you just will not be respected. And in fact, the more you kill, the less respect you will get. But besides the point being, we as Africans must understand on the continent, outside the continent, anything that is harming our community must go, as in not exist anymore in life. Go, poof, off of this world. However you interpret that, go ahead and interpret it. Must go. We cannot stop ourselves from removing it from existence because that things, the oppressors, the harmers, right? Harming. Harmers law says you cannot act a certain way to remove them from existence. In other words, for us to preserve our lives, we must break the oppressor's law. Must. It is the only way we survive. You said something that I don't want us to just. Oladele, I'm gonna mute you.
Can I say something about what you've just raised?
Please, 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 my brother, please.
In order for the few to manage the majority, one of the most interesting things they've developed is an education system. So in every community, you have people of different intelligence, okay? And the most intelligent in the community generally would become wealthy. If you just leave a community to run on its own, the intelligent people would get wealthy. Now, if you want to control a community, then you come up with an education system that picks out the most intelligent from the community. So you have an exam system in primary school that sieves the most intelligent persons, and you take those to secondary school. And then in secondary school, you sieve out the most intelligent and you take those to university. And when you get those to university, then you indoctrinate them and you get them to think and act like you. You do not need to be in that community to remain in control anymore. You then use your big corporations to make sure they get the best jobs, they get the best government positions. You make sure you fund them to get into politics and to representative positions, and you have the hold of the whole community because everybody downstairs is looking up at their best. So you look at CDC Africa today, you look at WHO Africa today. There will be Africans who are running it, but they don't think like you or me. They think like the person who trained them. Now, in the old African way, everybody who was wise, when you went to seek advice from a wise person, or you went to learn something from a wise person, you never went empty handed. You always carried a goat or a chicken or something. So they ended up being wealthy. Now, if you wanted to make something, then the technicians, the people who could make the weapons, the people who could make the boats, the people who could make this, those artisans would be wealthy because everybody is going to buy from them. And you would find that the the other person that would also become prominent and wealthy was the medicine man, the person who knew how to use the herbs to treat would also get wealthy. But if you design an education system that only puts out the intelligent in one way, the academic intelligent person, and then you corrupt their thought process for them to behave like you, then we will never solve our problem in Africa. So today we have Africa CDC, we have WHO Africa, we have all these country regional WHO offices, but they think like master. They give solutions like master because they are paid by master. We have to reverse many things in Africa, but it is possible. It is possible to solve our problems if we are left to do it ourselves.
Exactly. And the only way we're going to be left to do it ourselves is not by asking, it is by removing that
Yes.
one who is in the way,
Power,
removing them
power
by
is
force.
taken here. Power is
Power.
taken. It is not
Thank you.
given.
You know what, Dr. Wahome?
So
Listen,
that's what I mean. So we need a revolutionary thinking, basically, is what you're saying. We need to do something different.
again, on the
In fact, it is, you can call it whatever you want. The
Yeah.
thing is, if we sat down as African professionals who believe in Ubuntu and we solved our problems based on our region and our resources. Now, if you call that revolutionary, whatever you call it, yeah, the thing is that we must understand that the puppet master still has amongst us people who are doing his bidding, and he has placed them in places of power and in places of academic excellence to remain there for some particular things. So the change would have to be here first, but then it would also be in the education system. It would also have to be in the governance system. It has to be an all-round solution.
exactly. So Ruto must go is a very temporary, useless goal.
You see,
Um,
I'll tell you something, Duko. The thing is, even within that context, it is possible to burn Kenya down. We saw it happen in 2007, 2008. And whatever solution we come up with would still have to be respectful of the Constitution. And I can tell you that where people have reached now, with just the right mobilization and bringing people together, it is possible for everything to change in 2027. Now, those of us who are interested in governance are not are not are aware that governments in power will want to remain in power,
Exactly.
and that they will use all means possible, including
Mm-hmm.
rigging of elections and all that stuff. But it is possible to organize, for the people to organize themselves and actually change the course of history in Kenya in 2027. And there is a lot of work that is going on towards that. So we appreciate everyone, even the most radical on the other side, the people who are on the streets, everyone. But the goal is just one, that we must save our country from the infiltration. And in fact, if you just look at the government and the policies it is pushing on GMO, the vaccination of
Mm-hmm.
animals
Mm-hmm.
and all that, you can tell this is not, it is not our politicians thinking. It is so obvious that
Yeah.
somebody else is pulling the strings. And I think Kenyans have come to that point where it is now clear that we must engage in governance in a very serious way for us to get out of this and never get back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So you mentioned earlier on, I will say, with the understanding, because again, this is Kumbukeni and this is Nduko, with the ancestors who stand by me and guide me, and with our Creator having put me on a certain path. The Constitution is not our Constitution, right? And we have been sold this lie about constitutions when we are not a part of making them. So I would call, in African culture, I would call a constitution a terms of agreement by the community, right? We gather in Bongi, the Council of Elders is leading the conversation, the issues are presented, solutions are presented, majority of the community agrees, and we all agree that we're going to move in a certain way. Terms of agreement built by the community. And there's ways to do that in a situation like Kenya. And so when you have a constitution that has been created by elitists who have been miseducated, as you said, Dr. Wahome, gone through an education of whiteness and white supremacy, then you understand, and not just that, not just that. So these are Black men and women, mostly men, who are operating as white men, right? That's what I'm trying to describe.
I call them
But
coconuts.
Oladele has a special word for them. But he said coconuts. He has a special. I don't tend to use words like that because I understand the harm they have had in our communities. I'm talking about the case in Rwanda with the whole cockroach thing. So I don't tend to use words like that. But I more logically explain it. Not only are these people, Black men and women, operating mentally as white men, not even women, white men. The white men, UK, is making a call, and why am I forgetting our brother's name who was involved in Ekuru Aukot has said this himself before, that the UK was not happy with a clause that spoke on land, and therefore they called Kenya, reprimanded them, and they were like, you're not going ahead with this constitution as long as this is worded this way. And Kenya changed. So the constitution is not ours. So why would we follow the constitution that is not ours? Why would we? And when
Well,
we understand and observe Museveni, who had a constitution for Uganda that said he cannot rule after 75 years, who took force, violence to threaten the members of parliament, paid some of them so that he could change that age and rule longer, to the point where just recently he had to tell his son, step down, my son, and continue ruling. When you have a situation, why would you follow the constitution, people?
well,
Great.
they're very good questions. There is a way of using what exists to bring Africanism into the way people vote. And it is something that you might want to think about. The idea is the power must be devolved to the family level,
Exactly.
so that the communities that live, say, in a flat, in a certain place, come together and amongst themselves select and elect the most morally upright amongst them to be that council of elders. So what makes it possible for morally corrupt people to get into power is the democratic elections where the parties put in people in the ballot, and then you can only choose from those on the ballot.
Mhm.
So this needs to come back so that once this election, an election is done at the grassroots by people who know you, who understand you and have lived with you, if those are the people who saying you are worthy, only then can you go to the next level. So there is a way of Africanizing this monster we were given called democracy. But it would be outside party lines. It would have to be devolving to the family level. And that is the point which we should do the screening. So there are things that we can share. The things that we can share, things we are trying, and maybe if they succeed, will be an example to the rest of Africa.
Exactly. So, um, I'm not going to say it because we have, I was going to say Aluta Continua, but no,
Yeah.
we have fake revolutionaries making that call. And no, 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 no. We
Okay.
continue the fight.
Yeah, we do.
The Kenya Land and Freedom Army never finished their fight. General Bamwingi told us that we didn't listen. Jomo Kenyatta went ahead and killed him and his fellow warriors. The fight
Yeah.
that the Kenya Land and Freedom Army started was never finished. They never achieved what they were fighting for. So we must continue the
You,
fight for
you,
land and freedom. Go on, Dr.
do you
Wahome.
remember? Do you remember how each of those fights would start?
Go ahead and tell them.
You would have to identify the traitors from amongst you and deal with those first.
Mm.
If it is America, then we want to know the house nigger. Uh, there is somebody amongst us who is playing ball. And every time they open their mouth to talk about policy, we should be able to see them and flag them and say that that solution is not consistent with the priorities of this country. So there is, the sad thing is when we respect positions that are given because a certain person is one of us and he holds a certain position.
Mm.
That's where the error begins. So we must be able to see the traitors among us, flag them, and every time they open their mouth, we shut our ears like we have seen the devil.
Interesting.
Dr. Wahome just answered Maboma's
Yeah,
question,
you did. Yeah.
right?
Okay,
I-
I've got a question here. I'll put it on the screen. Are vaccines necessary to protect against ill health? I think you touched upon this before.
So each one of them must be looked at for its value. Each one of them must be assessed individually. You cannot give a blanket statement on vaccines because you can produce a vaccine for literally anything. Let me give you another simple example, the flu vaccine. All right. Now, the British knew that vitamin D deficiency would cause low immunity, and therefore they would insist on their children being given cod liver oil. If you're in any country that was ever colonized by the British, then you remember your mother insisting you must take cod liver oil.
Yep, I
The
remember.
reason it was a cut and paste solution. Now they don't have enough sun, and vitamin D, if you expose your skin to the sun, you produce natural vitamin D. So for us to prevent vitamin D deficiency in Africa, we need to get our children to go out and play shirtless. That's the solution. They don't need cod liver oil. And the only people who would need vitamin D supplementation are adults who have a work profile that doesn't allow them to go into the sun. Now, guess what? Vitamin D deficiency was a major problem in COVID 19. Anybody who had low vitamin D deficiency suffered very severe disease. That is the same as the flu. So if America today put all their people on vitamin D supplementation because of the type of weather they have, they would actually remove deaths from flu. They would actually reduce flu. And the solution has been that the sun is very dangerous. The UV rays will damage your skin. You need to put sunscreen even in summer as you go into the sun. Sunscreen will block up to 90% of the UV rays. So you are in the sun, you don't produce any vitamin D. And when you get flu, every 2 seasons in a year because it is cold. So flu is not an issue during summer because people are producing some vitamin D. The solution is to vaccinate you annually for the flu. Now, if that is not witchcraft, what is it?
I love that you're saying that. I love that flippity flip psychology on the Mzungu, right? They're the ones who call us witchcraft, and so flip it. Let's show exactly
Well,
what witchcraft is.
Nduko, the African people have always known God.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even before Christianity and Islam came to this
Exactly.
continent. But the Europeans were pagans. Nobody can lecture us about God.
Thank you, Doctor.
It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense.
This vitamin D, I am evidence of the fact that we need vitamin D, because during the winter, given that I have the unfortunate fate of being in the United States where there is no sun during the winter, I take vitamin D. I get mine from Whole Foods. I take vitamin D. And Bill Gates, if you're listening, if you try and sabotage the vitamin D in Whole Foods, I tell you, we're really going to organize your exit from this earth. But all jokes aside, I take vitamin D in the winter. And this winter, because I had financial issues, long story, those who follow me know, I was not able to get it in time. So I need to actually go now that I'm back to earning some money and get vitamin D. I caught a cold, right? So you're right.
Yes.
That vitamin D.
Vitamin C, one of the fruits with the highest level of vitamin C is mapera. Nduko, you remember mapera?
They don't have them here. They used to grow because
they were
as you
wild.
right when the bird eats them,
yes,
they poop. They grow everywhere.
They grow everywhere. But we are here in Africa struggling to import oranges from Israel and other places.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Mapera, for those of you who don't speak Ubuntu Swahili, is guava.
Okay,
guava.
Okay, guava definitely. I know that is.
It's a bit of guava and sunlight, and your immunity is good. So you'll be able to keep away flus and colds. But our big friend offers us vaccines. Now they're even suggesting our children should be vaccinated against the flu in China.
Yeah, but
we're gonna talk about something else too on top of vaccine because it's related. But as you speak of guavas, mapera, we used to be sent to visit my grandma. So I have all of us have two grandmas, my mother's mother and my father's mother. My mother's mother, we would go to both sides, but my mother's mother.
I had 21 grandmothers.
Oh, good. Listen, that's a conversation for another day. That one is, I am sure, grounded in African spirituality. So we need to talk about that. But she had fruit all over. Guava, mangoes, zambarao. It was just fruit. So we used to leave the house early in the morning after eating breakfast, and we would not come back until evening because we had food. We were running around eating mapera, eating the mangoes, climbing the trees and all, and we rarely got sick. We were the dirtiest kids you would ever see, but we did not get sick.
Do you remember a neighbor getting mumps, and your mother would send you to actually hang around?
Go hang out with them so that you get it, so that
you get it.
We call it a day.
And we finish with it when you're still young.
Yes.
And your neighbor has chicken pox and your mother sends you to them.
That actually happened in my household. Yes. And then she washed us with salty water. Yes.
So basically, Doctor, what you're saying here is we Africans have the solutions that we need to do what we need to do for ourselves. So,
We would be happy to live within our means.
yeah.
So if say I live in a grass thatched house
Mm,
and I am away from the weather and I am not being rained on
mm.
and I am happy, and you come and you call me poor
Eh,
and you say I should live in a house built by your standard, then we really must have a discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, for a
Oh,
long time
Doc,
the building
love you for what
for a
you
long,
said.
for a long time the building standards in the city of Nairobi required that your roof should be able to hold a certain weight of snow. Where do you get snow in the tropics?
Oh,
Is cut and paste British law, isn't it?
yes, it is.
yes.
Yes.
It is.
Now we have so much heat that when you get rid of your of your grass thatched house, and you make one of iron sheets, you can't live in it. It is so bloody hot during the day. You have to stay in the sun.
You know,
I am
you know,
so glad. Go on, Oladele.
you know what, Doctor Helmet. You know, me and Ndiku, we have a project coming up.
Exactly.
Eco-friendly project. We're actually gonna build thatch roofs, houses, mud huts. Basically, we're basically gonna go back to
We're
the beginning.
returning to it.
We're gonna
Yes.
go back to it because, like I
But to
said,
be
I remember my grandparents in the village. We had the clay pots
Yeah.
in the huts. The water was cold. We didn't
keep
need a
the water
refrigerator.
cool.
We did not
Now,
need a refrigerator.
now let me tell you a sad story about that.
Mm.
Do you know that you cannot use aluminium to cook in
We
Europe
shouldn't be.
and in the
Yes.
US?
Yes.
Because aluminium leaches into the water when you boil it. And therefore, you take a very large amount of aluminium with your diet.
Yes.
The
Yep.
clay pots used to protect us against that. But in Africa today, your best pot is aluminium. They won't sell it in their own countries, but they will allow us to use it here. We mine steel, we mine iron, but we are using pots that are actually making us sick. So if you need to keep the heat out, and you can use clay blocks, or you can mine them from the quarry. All we need to do as Africans is figure out what is this that can keep away the rain, that will not roast us during the day like the iron sheets do. And we have a beautiful solution.
We have.
Yeah, we are building houses that would last for 500 years.
Yes.
And then, you are dead before it has even lasted a quarter of his lifetime.
So
Right.
here's the joke. So we are, like my brother said, and they're going to be hold, yeah, I'll post this when I finish talking. So follow me on Instagram at Nduku9127. I'm gonna put it in the chat. But I say that so that I can connect you all with this Nigerian lady who makes everything clay, cups to drink, cooking pots, plates to eat, clay. She's great. And when I finally get a place of my own, when I resettle and rebuild, I will be reaching out to see how I can get these items. And it's funny because Dr. Wahome, I was speaking to relatives recently, telling them that they need to change their pots to clay, and I had to convince them that actually it works, which is very sad. But
That's what we had.
right,
You see, the
so
thing is, development is about improving what you have.
Yes.
I'm sure we could improve them in many ways, but the
Yeah.
idea is that they were healthier
Yeah.
than
mhm,
what we are being offered today. And,
Mm.
and
exactly.
people cannot imagine the kind of disease we are producing on ourselves. So, really, is our scientists must come and think as Africans, look at what we have, and stop cutting and pasting, stop benchmarking, and instead use what they were given by
Mhm,
our good Lord to
mhm.
solve our problems. We don't need people who love us more than we love ourselves to help us, for
We
goodness
don't.
sake.
We really don't.
You know what, Dr.
Definitely.
Holman, I don't even know what question to ask you anymore because you basically covered all bases.
But
You,
hold on.
yeah,
Outside of a question, I'm going to ask the audience
yeah,
a question, my
yeah.
brother, because this came up. So we are envisioning building a community where we are going to have hopefully at least 100 acres in each settlement. and we're going to be practicing communal ways of living. So we're not going to be advertising like they do in Ghana when they're reaching out to the diaspora to return individual pools in your backyard. No, it will be a community pool where you all gather and we continue building community. Most of our activities will be communal. Yes, you will have your home. Yes, you will be able to be with your children and nurture your own family, but most of everything will be bringing us together. But we are going to be using African ways of building. We're going to be using the circular method, which improves our spirituality. We're going to be using clay. We're going to be using thatch and all that. And as we described this, we've had people who say it's not sexy. People will not go for it. So I'm asking you all in the diaspora and those on the continent, would you move to a community like that? For those of you who end up watching today, go ahead and put in the chat. Would you move yourself to a community like that is practicing that vision and those practices?
But
when you watch this later, put it in the chat because there's always a chat afterwards. Would you move you and your family to a community like that?
But Unduku, saying what you're saying, guys, based on what Doctor's saying and what we've learned, is we had systems that worked for us. They work for us, and the only way the only way we got away from this because the colonizers came to tell us that what we have is a cake and doesn't work. So, like Dr. Wahome is saying, why don't we use our own indigenous knowledge systems and just improve on it and go back to what we had? Because that's the only way forward. Because, like Doctor said, everything that we're following, education, religion, politics, everything is basically taking us away from our Ubuntu, Abajawa in my language, kind of, and our spirituality is being perverted. So, yeah, we have projects coming up, guys. Just follow us. There's a lot we want to do, but we cannot do this without your support. Dr. Wahome, somebody just sent a message there saying, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please bring your wisdom, ideas in every African community. Thank you so much, Ubuntu. Somebody sent a message. Thank you for what you shared with us today.
The other thing I didn't want us to forget is you mentioned this, and I want you to talk further about it because it's important that our people know. And the reason we are telling you this is so that you can say no to this vaccination. At least for me, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do not allow yourself or your children to be vaccinated with this. And I found out recently through Kenyans that schools in Kenya, this is someone who was actually talking, and the child came home and said we were vaccinated, and the school did not ask the parent.
Yeah.
So those two things I need you to talk about. That one, and you mentioned that they're lacing the tetanus vaccination with infertility substances. So please speak on those two things.
So the first one, the HPV vaccine, we fought a big fight with the government because when they were bringing it in, they wanted to make it mandatory. In fact, according to the WHO policy, 90% of girls should be vaccinated. And once they give that kind of target to the Ministry of Health, it percolates all the way downwards so that people are now working towards hitting targets. They are no longer talking about preventing illness. It's very important for every person to understand that a vaccine is not mandatory. Vaccines cannot and must never be mandatory according to medical ethics. And it is not your business to find out whether the vaccine is safe or effective. It is the business of the proposer of vaccination to come to you with evidence, scientific evidence that is showing that this is a disease, this is how much damage it causes, this is a vaccine, this is how much damage it causes. Between the two of them, which one would you prefer to take? And those people who choose to take the vaccine then must be respected. Those people who choose not to take the vaccine then must be respected. It is only when you have those two cohorts that you can determine who made the right choice. Mandatory vaccination is designed to make sure you never get to know the risks of vaccination because everybody will have the same disease. So that's one. So the HPV vaccine, anytime children are being offered vaccination, it should be at the consent of their parents. Exactly. Now, I've had this debate with some healthcare workers, and they say that if a parent refuses a child to get a life-saving treatment, it is possible for the doctor to give that child that life-saving treatment because the parent is not thinking in the best interest of the child. And I'd like us to be very clear here. If, for instance, a child has had a road accident and requires to go to theater urgently, and the mother or the father says, my child will not go to theater, that health professional has a right to go to court and get a court order by a judge saying that the best interest of the child would be for the child to go to theater, and the parent can be overruled. But when you come to vaccination, vaccination is not a treatment, it is a preventive measure. You cannot force a parent to vaccinate their child. It is important that you talk to them as a human being, respect their dignity, and if they make a choice, then you must respect them. So the vaccination of children against HPV in Kenyan schools without the permission of the parents is illegal, and it is medically unethical. Now, about the tetanus vaccine, I wanted to clarify that the vaccine we tested that had a problem was the one that was used during the campaigns, when they were vaccinating 14-year-old girls all the way to 49-year-old girls. Now, we fought back as the Catholic doctors, and eventually WHO declared our country free of neonatal tetanus, and they stopped the program. So it is no longer running. But the vaccines that were tested that were in the stores, the ones that we're using for the routine vaccines, did not have that.
Okay.
So the least ones were the ones that were using during the actual campaigns.
Okay.
So it's important for us to know. And that's why I was saying for every vaccine, even the childhood vaccines, each one of them must be looked at merit. So should your child get a flu vaccine? As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make sense. Should your child get hepatitis B vaccine? As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make sense. There is a way we could discuss these things so long as we are not influenced by those who, we have vaccine experts who are paid to produce vaccines, who are paid to investigate vaccines, who are usually invited by governments to give opinions about vaccines and whether they should be used or not. The person who is eating from making or investigating vaccines is not the person to ask.
No.
No.
They are conflicted.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
cannot give you the right answer. The right person to ask is the doctor who is using this stuff and what they have seen. And then it is me as a doctor that the scientists should convince and prove to me the value of this thing being given at this point in time. There are other things about vaccines, like we call excipients. So it's not just the antigen that is given. There is a preservative. There is aluminium. There are other things.
Yeah.
And if you look at the doses of aluminium that a person should have based on weight, and then you look at how much we are giving to children at birth or within the first 1 or 2 months in terms of kilo
It's
and the
crazy.
amount of aluminium, you discover there are many problems.
Yeah.
And now the biggest problem the world is dealing with is non-communicable diseases. And non-communicable diseases have either an autoimmune problem or an inflammatory problem. What is triggering those? It is what is eating us is within us.
Yeah. I'm going to say something very important because I realize that YouTube is probably going to take this video down, and all the other white fragile white people. So we are now working on moving to a platform where we can be ourselves and we are not going to be taken down. All 2,000 plus, and we appreciate you very much, followers of Kumbukeni, subscribers of Kumbukeni. When we put out the announcement as to where we are moving, move, please, because we need to be able to have these conversations without the risk of being taken down. And then we need the videos to stay on for people to get this knowledge, because this information is not only done to disrupt the system, right? It is done to save your life again, to save our lives, to make us, to equip us with the information, with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
Right.
Not decisions because the government told us, not decisions because the government is threatening us, not decisions because you have been shamed into taking a vaccine. You're worried about what the other mothers are going to say about you. No, but an informed decision where you're going to sit and look at the pros, the cons, your family, the weights of your, like Dr. Wahome was saying, your baby is born, how much do they weigh, how much aluminium is in that vaccination. You're looking at things with information and making decisions based on that, not based on anything else. So it is important that these videos stay up. We have a brother that is helping us create a space where we can have these conversations. We want to get off of YouTube. We want to get off of these white fragility spaces. And we do want to continue building the economic liberation that comes with doing this work, or at least we would like you to support us to be able to do this work. So when that announcement comes, again, people move. We're not asking you, we actually are telling you, move. Let's be like water. Let us move.
Yeah, the challenge is basically we are on a Muzungu's platform basically, and they can shut us down. They shut me down on this platform twice already. Basically, I've been restricted. I've been taken down on Facebook so many times. So they're not, because this kind of information, they don't want us to hear this. We don't want to share this. So, and it's difficult because I look on LinkedIn, because we stream on LinkedIn a lot, and we see the platforms basically, we're trying to fit into their system. Trying to look for work in their system. We're basically trying to do everything in their system. So what we're trying to do is build a system that's going to work for us. So that means it takes sacrifice for us to take ourselves away from their system to build our own. And most of our people struggle to do this, because if they're not still participating in the white system, they think they're missing out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically the kind of mindset decolonization that we need to do. So basically, when we're talking about these things, we need to build our own community. Like Dr. Wahome said, we need to build our own community. We need to do things within ourselves because we're more than capable. Dr. Wahome said so much to that. We can actually do things without them. Create our own solutions, our own ecosystem, our education, our own politics. We can basically do these things ourselves, guys. What we're asking for it doesn't take brains, it doesn't take, it's just common sense. Why would you feed it into the system that's been messing you, bastardizing you for years, and still going back to that same system over and over again? Think about it.
And we do understand the transition will take time. Like, it's not like you're waking up and saying, I'm out of the system. We understand that we need to build that thing that we are asking us to move to in order for us to move, right? But we have to start moving, people.
We have to sow the seed.
We have to start moving. We have to start cleansing ourselves of this infectious death economy system, death culture. We have to start building a life culture and moving towards it. So one step at a time, but you cannot stay stagnant. You have to start moving. Dr. Wahome, I want to say a special thank you to you, because not only have you informed us, but you took time and you took the wisdom that comes with age to speak in a very thoughtful way. And it pisses me off that Twitter and YouTube specifically takes you down, because what you're saying is very logical. It's very logical. You're not like, there's no conspiracy theory in what you're saying. It is 1 + 1 = 2, what you're saying. And you have evidence because you're a practicing doctor. You have evidence. And so it really makes me angry that we are not rising up as much as we need to do against the YouTubes and the Twitters. And here's my call to action to our people. We exist knowing that we are moving. And when we move, we will move without worrying about Elon Musk and how he's going to survive. In fact, we will celebrate his downfall. In fact, we will celebrate their fragility. I find pleasure in white fragility. I urge you all, my fellow Black African people, Wana Ubuntu, to find pleasure in white fragility. When Karen starts acting uncomfortable, put on your smile and tell Karen, cry a river, build a bridge, and get over it. You have been killing my people for years. Your tears are nothing compared to the blood that has been spilled of my people. So wipe them and put on your big girl pants and hear the truth. I'm done, Oladile. Asante sana, Dr. Wahome.
Thank you, Dr. Wahome. Just before you go, just a question for you, for our next guest, please, sir. From our last guest.
Yes.
We have
we need a question from you, but yes.
We have a tradition of basically asking our guest a question, and we get a question from you as well. So the question from our last guest was, knowing that you would not fail, what would you do differently?
Knowing
that you will not fail, what would you do differently?
That you will not fail.
You will not fail.
You have forgotten your African tongue. Fail.
F-A-I-L.
Yeah.
Knowing I will not fail, what would I do differently?
Yes.
I would look within. I would continue to look within, because I would find the solution. It has to come from within.
I agree. Actually, it sits in my spirit. Yeah, that's exactly where I am. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Now, a question from Dr. Wahome for our next guest.
For the next guest?
Yes, please, sir.
Why would you believe that we cannot do it?
Ooh. We cannot do it.
Why would you believe we cannot do it?
That sounds brilliant. Thank you.
And we're going to extend this to the audience too. So put your answers in the chat here.
Yes.
Send us an email, kumbukeni1@gmail.com, if you don't want to put yourself on blast. Put your answers on the video later. There's a chat there. So please, why would you believe that we cannot do it?
Yeah.
And on that note, we can do it, guys, because that's why we're here. We believe we are our own solutions. Dr. Wahome, we really thank you for your time. Basically, I was just eating up everything you're saying. It was basically, even I had questions, I wrote questions down, but there's no point me asking you questions because you basically covered all bases.
But we need to bring him back. So don't leave, Dr. Wahome, because I need to talk to you quickly, just a couple minutes of your time. But we need him to touch on the subject. For those of you, quickly. Let's share this video quickly, the one that Kwabena shared this morning. Okay. Let me just quickly share it.
Are you okay for time? Are you okay for time? Okay, just bear with us. We're just going to put a link there so you can actually re-watch it.
Yes, watch this video. Dr. Wahome speaks on something very important. And the topic is going to be our femininity.
Yeah.
Bringing back our African rituals that help us understand our body. So I'm thinking of doing it in a different format. So look out for that announcement. There will be a cost. And then through that cost, for those who have the money to pay for it, there will be offers to those who don't have the money, and we will balance. It will all make sense when we have it together. But just an FYI, bringing back our rituals for our women to understand their bodies and our men to understand their bodies. Oladele, do you have it? I'm trying to find it.
No, give me a second. I'll get the clip.
Yeah, I found it, I think.
I've got it. You got it?
Yeah.
Copy. You got it, yeah?
Yes. So I'm putting the link. Okay. Watch this video. Take your time. It seems long, but it is worth sitting down with this video. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Watch it. And for those of you who have girls, those of you who are thinking of having children, bring back the rituals. Have your child watch this. Sit down and talk to them about what Dr. Wahome is talking about in this video. It is important that our girls understand. I mean, the lessons he brings in this video, and I'll quickly just explain. He's talking, you know what, Dr. Wahome, why am I talking on your behalf? Please explain quickly. I know this is not about vaccinations, but quickly, the female cycle, menstrual cycle, quickly, the 3 stages, quickly.
Yeah, okay. So for a long time, we have lied to the woman that her cycle has only 2 phases. So when the menstrual cycle is taught in schools, it is taught as menstruation and then dryness until the next menstruation. And it is actually taught as menstrual hygiene. So the girl is only taught to take care of the bleeding, and that's it. But in the middle of the cycle, there is a second wetness that a woman experiences where she notices some very clear, very slippery mucus for a period of 1, 2, or 3 days. And that is her gift of fertility. That is what God has given the woman, the capacity to give us new life. So the time of that mid-cycle wetness plus 3 days then determines the fertile window of the woman. So if she has 1 day of the fertile mucus, she's fertile for 4 days that month. If she has the mucus for 3 days, she's fertile for 6 days. Now, the body of the woman will speak to her when she is about to get her periods so she can predict them. The body of the woman speaks to her when she's about to get fertile. She should be able to predict it. So, what women need as empowerment is to understand the female cycle. So, the periods, the bleeding, and then the time. So, from the bleeding until the beginning of the mucus, we are waiting for fertility. The beginning of the mucus plus the 3 dry days after the end of the mucus is a fertile window. And then from the 4th day after the end of the mucus until the periods come again, fertility is over. So if our people understood, and this is what they used in the past, if the baby is small, you allow the fertile window to pass. You do not have sexual intercourse during the fertile window. If the baby is big enough and you're ready for the next one, then you have sex during the fertile window. And it is possible to space your children without ever having to take any medication.
I am telling you all, talk about revolution, knowing our body and
Yes.
the pain and heartache it would save so many of us women. And just having that empowerment of hearing your body when it speaks to you and moving intimately with our male partners with that knowledge. So, yes, we must bring him back for that and we must make this a practice. So, we're going to think about how we're going to do it. If we're going to have a program for girls to attend regularly so that we're talking and they can ask questions, we're definitely going to think about how we're going to do this.
And remember, all you need to teach the men is their natural, God given duty is to protect the woman. And therefore, you respect her. If she says she's fertile and the baby is small, you're not an animal. You will not die. You wait. In any case, it's sweeter when you wait.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate your wisdom. Guys, once again, we thank you all for being part of this. We've got another one coming up next week. Actually, we normally do this every 2 weeks, but we've got another one coming up next week. And this time, Jane Elliott, who was not here last time, she's basically offered to come next week. So we're looking forward to having Jane Elliott to come and talk to us about there's only one human race, like Dr. Wahome just said. There's only one race. So she's going to be talking about there's only one race. So Dr. Wahome, we thank you very much. Nduku, as always.
Asante.
Thank you very much.
Asante, asante, asante. Kila laheri.
We'll see you all